Most of the people who have successfully moved from Nigeria to Canada in the last 5 years are people who were not poor in Nigeria.
You have people in Canada who came in with PhDs, but had to go and work in a departmental store just to get ahead, because you don't want to be spending your naira. You want to be earning somebody dollars. Who earns $150,000 in Canada today will pay about $50,000 in taxes. Here's the catch. Because you earn $150K, the government looks at you and says, you're rich, you earn enough. There's certain benefits for your children that you don't get anymore. That's why the Nigerian is going out to look for a job he will do between 5 p.m. and 12 midnight.
Canada is taking our brightest and our finest. Your artisan or your carpenter or your electrician here in Nigeria will thrive in a place like Canada. But the problem is that Canada will not pick them.
You're not taking the vulcanizer on the streets in Nigeria who will come here and excel. You're not taking Onyebuchi the tailor. You're not taking the truck pushers. You're not taking the bus conductor. You're not taking these people. You're taking educated people and you bring them here and you dumb them down.
Will Canada's next election result mirror that of America's?
Immigration is going to be a major factor come the next election. Now, Canadians are angry. Immigrants. The sentiment is online. And you know, when there's a sentiment on immigration, nobody wants to understand or nobody cares on how you came in. Oh, you came in through the legal pathway, or you came in through this skilled express entry. Nobody cares. You're different.
It's all the same.
You're an immigrant. It's all the same. I told somebody, I said, it is normal human emotion. A Canadian normally does not have a problem with immigration. Canadian doesn't have a problem that his neighbor is black.
No.
But the Canadian starts to have a problem. You know why? When he has a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old daughter and he says,
I can't get a job.
Another firecracker of a session. Did you know that there were benefits that people cease to have when they earned above a certain level? I didn't know, hearing for the first time. This was another interesting watch. Also, did you know that Canadian natives, according to my very informed guests, Canadian natives really don't bother or don't care about the color of the skin or who is who. They're just bothered about deep pocket issues. If you're just getting or finding out about this video in this series in part 3, I would highly recommend that you go back and watch part 1 and part 2. That gives you full context and gives you more understanding of what is happening. Now let's get into part 3.
Yep. So a gun is a fantastic tool. Like immigration, a gun and immigration are fantastic tools. If you give a soldier a gun, he protects. If you give a thief a gun, he destroys. It's the same gun. So immigration, when you use it properly, it's a fantastic tool. When you abuse it, it becomes something else. Now, somebody who earns $150,000 in Canada today will pay about $50,000 in taxes. So you're going home with 100. But here's the catch. Because you earn $150K, the government looks at you and says, you're rich, you earn enough. There's certain benefits for your children that you don't get anymore. Your CCB will collapse. Childcare benefits will drop. The daycare things that you get will drop. There's many other benefits that I can't remember that will drop simply because you earn 150. Now, some people have figured out that they can sit down, if you earn $100,000, you're paying 31,000 in taxes, and you're going home with 69,000. The government will look at you and be like, you might be struggling. They give you benefits. Now, a Nigerian would say, okay, perhaps if I find something, if I can do something and earn 200, I don't care. Let's forget about government benefits. We're not getting it anymore. If I do something and take my income up to 200, okay, my taxes would be maybe 60, 70K, but that's 130 that I keep. And all those benefits that I don't get, I can pay for them. That's why the Nigerian is going out to look for a job he will do between 5 p.m. and 12 midnight. Most people who, before this immigration thing started, would get their one job and they are fine with it. But the bigger question is, for people who are saying we are gatekeeping, if this economy was growing the way it used to grow when we came here, nobody will have time to say you're taking my job, you're taking the nobody. There's nothing to take. Go and get a job. There's jobs there. We're saying that because there's an underlying problem which nobody wants to address. So if your rate of economic growth is 1.1%, which is what the Canadian economy grew by last year, and your rate of population growth is 3%, you have a problem. Now, if the government is continuing to bring in immigrants, that's importing people into poverty. And me, as a decent human being, I don't want that for you, Olusegun. You mentioned about MSc and this and this. Busui, you know what we did when we came here now? Let's not paint like I had to go and work in a store putting things on the shelf. I had to do that to survive before I waited to get the Canadian experience. You have people in Canada who came in with PhDs but had to go and work in a departmental store just to get ahead, because you don't want to be spending your naira, you want to be earning dollar. And then after a while, now it takes you longer. There's people who came here and 1 year after they've not seen a job. I got a job. I came in May. I got a job in June. It was a job on construction. I haven't done construction in my life, but I had to take it. They paid me $19 per hour and I worked 10 hours a day. That was a lot of money for me in 2016. And then I moved. I even had to change my career. I was a manager in quality assurance, pharmaceutical manufacturing in Nigeria. Now I'm doing supply chain management and warehousing. I had to completely change my career. Now, the people who say racism this, racism that, I asked them this question and nobody has been able to give me the answer. How come your certificates are good enough to come here, but not good enough to get you into the field that you left? You're ignoring this. You're not taking the vulcanizer on the streets in Nigeria who will come here and excel. You're not taking Onyebuchi the tailor. You're not taking the truck pushers. You're not taking the bus conductor. You're not taking these people. You're taking educated people and you bring them here and you dumb them down. Why is nobody addressing this? But you, and then the people who, this is how I see it. I come here, I'm black. I live on a street where I might be the only black person who owns a house on this street. It's an older neighborhood, so there's a lot of elderly people. So I asked the guy this question who said he was oppressed because he was black. And I said to him, okay, you and your wife have a household income of 200K. You have 2 kids. You have a house that is about $500,000. You've spent only about 5 years in Canada. You are 42 years old. The guy in your basement is white. He was born in Canada. He's about the same age as you. Lives in your basement in a 1-bedroom apartment. But because he's white, you believe that he's oppressing you. When I asked this guy this question, he looked at me and was like, I have never thought about it this way. And I said, you need to fight where your strengths are. Perhaps we are being told we're oppressed because some people know that if you leave us alone, we are going to take over the system because of our work ethic, because of the drive that we have. Everyone who goes abroad, if your father doesn't tell you, your mother will tell you, remember who you are. Remember where you came from. That statement is ingrained in all of our brains. And even when you sleep, I don't want to go to work today. Remember, yeah, I'm going. You wake up and you go because there's value that you need to, there's a place you're heading for that you need to get to. But will I sit here and say everything I'm saying is correct? People have their own, realities, but I'm just speaking mine. I don't. If people want to believe that they are oppressed, that's fine. But you live in a system where you are it's almost like you're encouraged to be complacent.
Mm.
People will say things like, it's government money, it's free money. But the government cannot spend a dollar that it has not earned from taxes.
Mm.
So for the government to give me this benefit, they have to take it from somebody in form of taxes.
Yes.
If I understand this, then I understand that the less demand I make of government, the more money I keep as a person.
Mm.
The more money whoever keeps as a person, the less demand I make of a government, the smaller the government becomes, and the less expensive it is to run the government.
Mm.
But we're getting into something else. But yeah, that's my perspective.
I was just even going to mention something again
All right.
about based on what you said again.
Yeah.
And I jotted some things down. And one thing I was going to mention was that when I came into Canada 2021, you know, I'm this kind of person. I took a cautious effort not to interact with a lot of Canadians born here, Caucasians, you know, Caucasians, blacks, and you see a lot of curiosity in a lot of them. Like a lot of them were always curious. Why, you know, of all countries, like, why did you choose to come to Canada? You know, that kind of thing. They were always excited, like, okay, someone even decided to move here, you know, come to your country because. But of late, you will realize that, especially when you go on the internet, there is a growing sentiment against immigration. And I always tell people this. And one of the things, because people say, racism. And I'm like, look, this is not racism. Just like Emeka has mentioned. When you sit down and you dissect things from a perspective, you understand that, look, this is just normal human emotion.
Interaction. Simple.
The moment something starts to affect me economically, starts to affect my pockets, it draws out a reaction in me. And this is what I tell people. One day where I was having a discussion with someone, the person was like, racism, look at what the people are saying on Twitter. And I was like, look, it's not racism. Immigration is going to be a major factor come the next election. This was one of the driving forces that made Trudeau make that statement. And you know, because at a point in time, let me break it down to you. There were two distinct ways then of coming to Canada. If you wanted to move to Canada, you either moved through the express entry system, the skilled express entry system, or you came through education. You came here to school, and you're able to, also stay back. The people who came in through streams like refugee, you know, asylum were very, very
little.
Now, when you look at the express entry system, the way it is designed is a point-based system. Remember, I used to have that discussion with you. You had to have it. There were a number of factors they considered: your level of education. If you had a BSc, you get points. You have a master's.
How old you are?
Yeah, your age gives you, you know, level
more
of
points.
If you're 30, if you're 18 to 30, you get the full points. Once you clock 30, the points for age starts become, you know, you start to decrease. -5, you make 31, another -5, like that. Now you also have to write the English test, you know, to get those points that IELTS. Then you also have to have work experience in your field. The more
government work experience, so because all these private companies we work for, it doesn't really count. It counts, but it's not.
They have to verify.
Government, if you have a government job, okay.
They verify. So 3 years work experience in your field and more gives you the full points. Now, when you look at all those factors they considered, you will notice that what the government was trying to do, that they put together a criteria to get a certain category of people. Someone who is young, educated, and responsible. Because another thing again is that apart from even all these criteria, when you're coming in, you have to show something called proof of funds. Based on the number of the family you have. If you're just a man and a wife, you have a certain amount you have to show. A man and a wife and a child, another amount. So they needed someone who they were taking the criteria or category of people they were targeting was someone who is responsible. You have worked in this field for 3 years, you've been able to save this amount of money, you are educated, and all. So it was, it was a good thing, and they were able to, streamline the numbers. Now, if you came in through education, it means that number one, again, you are coming into their system, you're contributing to the system because number one, you're paying fees. And as an international student, you pay way more higher fees than the local students. If you come into the express entry system, you're coming in with your proof of funds. So immediately you come into the system, you're renting a house, you're paying for for things, you're buying groceries immediately. You do not get government assistance and everything. But when you're coming in as a refugee into the country, yes, it's more of humanitarian, needs and everything. You're almost coming in as a deficit immediately into the system because you don't have to show any proof of funds, you don't have to be educated, you don't have to be. And when you come in, the government has a responsibility,
to accommodate you,
make you get a house, so give them allowance for a few periods to get them settled and everything. Now, what now happened was that you moved away from this system where you had most of your immigration was coming in through the express entry and school, and you opened up different avenues whereby a lot of people,
all kinds of people,
asylum. You increased students visas and everything, quota, and a lot of mushroom colleges
is giving out kinds of
coming out
without accreditation.
So a lot of international students and a lot of people were seeing that opportunity to, like this is my opportunity to come in. Some of them were coming in truly to study. Some of them came in probably after a month or 2 months, they're going to file asylum because they know that, look, I don't have the expenses to really take care of my education. So immigration numbers boomed seriously. And what happens is that when your immigration numbers boom seriously and your economy cannot handle, those numbers, your economy is almost going to tank. When employers have too many, how do I put it, a glut of applicants or labor, what happens?
Wages drop.
Cost of labor drops.
It's economics.
More than demand.
Exactly. Yep. Demand for houses go up, and once demand for houses go up,
rent goes up.
Go up. Inflation, everything goes out of the how do I put it, out of control. Now Canadians are angry. Immigrants. The sentiment is online. Immigrants, immigration. The Trudeau government opened up and bring in anybody. Now, immediately there's a crime somewhere, something happens somewhere, and unfortunately for you, it happens to be an immigrant.
Ooh.
Same brush.
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, because when you look at immigration, also there's been a certain demographic that are the majority. They take like 60%, in terms of the immigration number. So the probability that when probably an immigrant commits a crime,
it'll be that demographic.
Demographic is them. So there's a lot of concentration on them. That sentiment on them is crazy and is growing. And when there's a sentiment on immigration, nobody wants to understand or nobody cares on how you came in. Oh, you came in through the legal pathway, or you came in through this skilled express entry. Nobody cares. You're different. You're an immigrant. It's all the same. And when we are having these discussions, people are getting like, but what are they saying about immigrant? And I'm like, look, and I told somebody, I said, it is normal human emotion. So I told the person, I said, I am Nigerians, are we racist? The person says no. And then I said, so can you remember Ghana Moscow? The person was like, what do I mean? I said, what do you think happened Ghana Moscow?
Why did that name come up?
What do you think happened? So I googled it for him and gave the person the phone. He looked at it and he kept quiet. I said, so Nigerians, do you think we were racist at that point? How do you think Ghanaians felt at that point in time? I said, look, when there's an economic crisis, and
You find scapegoats.
A scapegoat has to be found. At that point in time, the scapegoats were the Ghanaians, and we took it out on them. In South Africa, you can see it also.
Yeah, section of tax and all
Xenophobia.
and everything towards Nigerians. It happens. I said
I mean,
a Canadian normally does not have a problem with immigration.
At
A
all.
Canadian doesn't have a problem that his neighbor is black.
No.
But the Canadian starts to have a problem. Why? When he has a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old daughter, and he says,
I can't get a job.
When I was able to get a job. But I go into the coffee shop near me, where I worked when I was 14-year-old, and I see a grown-ass immigrant there
With a PhD.
Working full time
With a
there.
PhD.
My 14-year-old daughter cannot get a job. My wife comes home later on, after how many months, and tells me that she has lost a job. Why? Because the economy is, and probably that her job has been an immigrant who will take a cheaper rate has replaced her.
It's happening.
I see my neighbor's wife going to work. I see my neighbor going to work every day, coming back. He's fine. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, this guy is in my country. And he has come in, he has come to take my job. He's doing better than me. Why is that happening?